Imagine a city waiting to die. It's April 14th, 1945. The Dutch city of Zwolle is sleeping under Nazi occupation. Its people don't know it yet, but Allied artillery is aimed at their homes. In a few hours, the shells will start falling. The city will be reduced to rubble. But one man is already moving through the darkness. He's alone. He's armed with a submachine gun and a sack of grenades, and he's about to do something that defies every law of military logic. His name is Léo Major. He has one eye, a dead best friend, and absolutely nothing left to lose. The legend in the streets. The Germans don't see him coming, they hear him. Gunfire erupting from one street, then seconds later from another. Grenades exploding in empty squares. It sounds like an entire battalion is closing in, but it's just one man, running, shouting, shooting, vanishing into the shadows like a ghost. He's creating chaos, pure, calculated chaos. The Nazi garrison, dozens of soldiers, starts to panic. They think they're surrounded. The one-eyed ghost is everywhere and nowhere. The impossible outcome. By sunrise, Léo Major has done the unthinkable. He has captured the town's commanding officer. He has rounded up groups of German soldiers and marched them out of the city as prisoners. He has walked into a bar, found enemy troops drinking, and disarmed them with nothing but intimidation. And he has done it all alone. Zwolle is liberated. The artillery strike is cancelled. A city of 50,000 people is saved. But how did a French-Canadian corporal from Montreal end up becoming a one-man army in the final months of World War II? To answer that, we need to go back. Back to a poor neighborhood, a troubled youth, and a young man who was told he would never amount to anything. Act 2. The Boy from Montreal, 2:30 to 6. A rough start. Léo Major was born in 1921 in New Bedford, Massachusetts, but his family moved back to Montreal when he was an infant. He grew up in the francophone neighborhood of Hochelaga, a working-class district where money was scarce and trouble was easy to find. His father, Achille, was a laborer, strict and distant. Young Léo didn't take well to authority. He was rebellious, restless, the kind of kid who couldn't sit still in class and couldn't hold his tongue. At 14, he quit school and went to work on his uncle's farm. The classroom bored him. The world outside called to him. The call to war. When World War II broke out in 1939, Léo was 18. Canada entered the war alongside Britain, and for a young man with few prospects and a deep hunger to prove himself, the army was an escape. He enlisted in 1940 and was assigned to the Régiment de la Chaudière, a French-Canadian infantry unit. But the army was not an easy fit for Léo either. He clashed with officers, he broke rules, he spoke his mind when he should have stayed silent. His superiors saw him as difficult, insubordinate, a liability. In peacetime, a man like Léo Major would have been discharged in disgrace. But war was coming. And war has a strange way of revealing who people truly are. Training and transformation. In training, Léo discovered something about himself. He was a natural soldier. Not the parade ground kind, the real kind. He had instincts that couldn't be taught. He was calm under pressure, creative in chaos, and absolutely fearless. His instructors noticed it, even if they didn't like him. One officer wrote, "This man is impossible to command, but I would want him next to me in a fight." Léo didn't just learn to shoot, he learned to observe, he learned to move. He became obsessed with reconnaissance, the most dangerous job in the infantry. Going ahead of the lines, alone, deep into enemy territory, and coming back with information. He didn't know it yet, but this obsession would save his life, and it would take his eye. Act 3. D-Day and the Lost Eye. 6 o'clock to 9:30. The beaches of Normandy, June 6, 1944. D-Day. The Régiment de la Chaudière landed on Juno Beach as part of the largest amphibious invasion in history. Léo Major was in the first wave, wading through blood-red water while German machine guns raked the sand. The chaos was unimaginable. Men screamed, bodies floated in the surf, tanks burned on the beach. But Léo kept moving. He crawled, he ran, he fired. By nightfall, the Chaudière had pushed inland. Léo Major had survived the most important day of the war. But it was only the beginning. The day everything changed. A few days later, during a reconnaissance patrol in the French countryside, Léo's unit was ambushed by a German machine gun nest. In the firefight, a phosphorus grenade exploded near Léo's face. The blast shattered his left eye. Shrapnel lodged deep in his skull. He collapsed, bleeding, blind, screaming. Medics dragged him back to an aid station. The doctors took one look and said the obvious. "This war is over for you. You're going home." Léo refused. He lay in that hospital bed and argued with every officer who walked past. He told them he could still shoot. He told them he could still fight. He told them, "I only need one eye to look down a rifle scope." Most men would have accepted the ticket home. Léo Major was not most men. After weeks of arguing, the doctors relented. They signed the papers. Léo Major, the one-eyed soldier, put on his uniform and walked back to the front lines. From that day forward, he was a legend. And he was about to prove it. Winter 1945. By early 1945, the war was grinding toward its end. The Allies were pushing into the Netherlands, but the Germans were fighting back with desperate ferocity. The winter was brutal, freezing rain, mud, exhaustion. It was during this miserable campaign that Léo Major did something that made his commanders sit up and blink. The night patrol. He was sent on a night reconnaissance mission near the town of Nijmegen. Alone, as usual. His job? Find the enemy positions and report back. Do not engage. Léo found the enemy all right. He found an entire German company dug into a village. And instead of reporting back, he decided to attack. He crept into the village in the dark. He spotted the command post, a house with lights on and officers inside. He crept up to the door, kicked it open, and opened fire. The German officers, completely surprised, panicked. In the confusion, Léo ran from building to building, shouting in broken German, firing bursts into the air, throwing grenades into empty yards. The surrender. The German soldiers, disoriented, thought they were under attack by a much larger force. Léo walked up to the senior officer and demanded his surrender. The officer, in shock, agreed. By the time reinforcements arrived, Léo Major had single-handedly captured 93 prisoners and was marching them back toward Allied lines. His commanders stared in disbelief. Who was this one-eyed maniac, and what could he possibly do next? The answer lay 90 kilometers north in a city called Zwolle. Act 5. The Road to Zwolle. 1200 to 1500. A city under occupation. Zwolle, April 1945. A beautiful medieval city in the eastern Netherlands, occupied by the Germans since 1940. The residents had suffered 5 years of hunger, repression, and fear. Now, with the Allies advancing, the city was caught in the crossfire. Canadian commanders knew Zwolle had to be taken, but a frontal assault would destroy the city and kill thousands of civilians. The plan: An artillery barrage, then infantry attack. Rubble and bodies, the standard equation. But first, they needed intelligence. What was the German strength inside the city? Where were the machine guns, the checkpoints? 2 men were chosen to find out. Léo Major and his best friend, Private Wilfred Willie Arsenault. Into the night. The 2 men slipped into the darkness on the night of April 13th, 1945. They moved like shadows through the outskirts of Zwolle. They mapped enemy positions. They noted patrol routes. The mission was working. Then, around midnight, everything went wrong. A German patrol spotted them. Guns flashed in the dark. Willie Arsenault was hit. Léo dragged his friend behind cover, but it was too late. Willie died in Léo's arms, bleeding out on a quiet Dutch road. The vow. Léo Major sat in the darkness, holding his dead friend. Something broke inside him, and something else, something colder and harder, took its place. He laid Willie down gently. Then he picked up his submachine gun, slung a bag of grenades over his shoulder, and turned towards Zwolle. He was supposed to return to base. Instead, he walked into the city, alone. He made a silent promise to his dead friend. I will finish this. I will free this town, and no more people will die tonight. Act 6. 1 man against a garrison, 1500 to 1830. Chaos unleashed. What happened next is almost impossible to believe, but it is documented, confirmed by both Canadian and German records. Léo Major began a 1-man assault on an occupied city. He ran through the streets of Zwolle, firing his Sten gun into windows and doors. He threw grenades into empty squares. He sprinted from alley to alley, changing positions every few seconds, shouting orders in different directions as if commanding an entire platoon. The Germans, confused and sleepy, stumbled out of their barracks. They heard gunfire from every direction. They heard shouting. They saw flashes in the dark. They had no idea how many attackers they were facing. Léo Major had become a ghost, a phantom army of 1. The surrender of the garrison. At one point, Léo walked into a bar where German soldiers were drinking. He stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the streetlights, and told them they were surrounded. The soldiers, exhausted and broken, laid down their weapons. Léo disarmed them one by one and locked them in a back room. He repeated this strategy over and over. Bursts of gunfire to create panic, then bold, sudden appearances demanding surrender. He captured the German commanding officer at gunpoint and forced him to order his men to stand down. Groups of terrified soldiers emerged from buildings with their hands up. By dawn, Léo Major had captured the entire German garrison, dozens of prisoners, control of the city centre, and he had done it without a single civilian casualty. The sun rises on Zwolle. As the first light crept over the rooftops, the people of Zwolle began to emerge from their homes. They saw a single Canadian soldier, exhausted, covered in grime and blood, herding groups of German prisoners. They didn't understand what had happened. How could 1 man do this? Léo Major walked to the edge of the city and signalled the Allied lines. Zwolle is clear. Send no artillery. The shelling was cancelled. The city stood. 50,000 people lived, and Léo Major collapsed against a wall, finally allowing himself to rest. The aftermath. Léo Major was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal, the 2nd highest award for bravery in the British Commonwealth. But he didn't care about medals. He cared about Willie. He cared about the people of Zwolle. After the war, Léo returned to Canada. He got married, raised a family, lived quietly. He didn't talk about the war. His neighbors had no idea they were living next to a legend. He worked as a pipe fitter. He lived an ordinary life. Léo Major died in 2008 at the age of 87. A humble end for an extraordinary man. The eternal gratitude of Zwolle. But Zwolle never forgot. The city named a street after him, Léo Major. They built a monument. Every year, school children learn the story of the one-eyed Canadian who saved their grandparents. In a world of forgotten heroes, Zwolle made a promise. This one would be remembered forever. And that's why we're telling this story today. Because some heroes don't seek glory. Some heroes just walk into the darkness, alone, because they can't stand by while the world burns. Léo Major was one of them. If you believe this kind of courage deserves to be remembered, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments, what city would you name a street after Léo Major? And subscribe, because there are more forgotten heroes out there, and we're going to find every single one of them.